Okay, you have your barrier right at the inequality. So you're going to add 5 to both sides because that is a subtraction problem. And then you get G is greater than or equal to 11 because you're adding 6 plus 5. Now let's do the number line. You could put 11. You're going up the number line. You could put a 12. Down the number line, about the same spacing, put a 10. Remember, it has to increase going to the right. Now, because this has that equal to sign, it has this line right here. It's got to be a solid dot, and G is greater than 11, so it's got to go up the number line, meaning greater. Number 2, you got your barrier right here. So make sure you realize that you got to move away from the H. So don't mess with the -2. You subtract 1 from both sides because that H is having 1 added to it. So then you get a -3 on this side. Keep that inequality of less than and H. When you graph it, put a -3 here. Remember, 0 would be over on the right-hand side because negatives always increase to the left. And if I'm increasing by 3s, that's 3. This needs to be a -6. This needs to be a hollow circle above the -3 because this inequality is less than, but not equal to. Then I have the arrow. This -3 is less than an H. So that means I need to get bigger than to reach the H. Another shortcut is remember to go the opposite. Your inequality is facing this way. That means your arrow would go this, but remember the H is on the wrong side of the inequality. So you would go the opposite of what that arrow is pointing. Okay, number 3 is a division problem because that's what that fraction bar means. So write times 2 in parentheses on both sides. That means this is actually gone because 2 divided by 2 is 1. That gets you x. Because these are positive 2's, you keep your inequality going the same direction, and then you solve that side for a -10. Now again, because I'm multiplying by positive 2's, my inequality does not flip. So to graph it, you have a -10. Remember, 0 is going to be the right side. Now if I'm going by 10's, this is 10, that means -20 would be over here. You do not have to do 0. You could do -9 right here and -11. Just make sure they are growing as you go this direction. Okay, so you have a hollow circle and you are traveling to the left because your arrow points that way and X is on the correct side. Number 4. You are going to flip that fraction. It's -3/1. Do not drop the negative sign. This isn't something that you change to get to the other side. Now that this equals 1, you have C over here. Now I did multiply by negatives, so this inequality is going to become less than or equal to. Don't drop the equal to sign. And you got a 3 times a -3, which is a -9. When you divide by that 1, it doesn't change its value. So let's go -9, put 0 over here, -18. The C is on the correct side. Let's do a solid. And since the C is on the correct side, the arrow is pointing in the correct direction. Right there. Okay, so number 5, -3m, those are next to each other, so that means multiplication. The opposite is division, and you got to get rid of the negative also. So put divide by -3 on both sides. What you get is 25 divided by 3. The negatives, 2 negatives make a positive, so you don't have to worry about that. 3 goes into 25 8 times, and the remainder is 1/3. So 8 1/3. They don't have to come out even. I did divide by a negative, so that greater than is now less than, and you got a positive m over here. So to graph it, you have a 0, negative 8 1/3. 0 is over here, and then to get that same distance, it'd be negative 16 2/3 over here. This one needs to be an open circle. It does point this direction, but because m is on the wrong side, you go to the other direction. Number 6, you need to see this as 74 is less than, and that's a negative 1x. Remember, that is 1x. You just don't have to put the 1. So this is just dividing by a negative 1. When you divide by a negative, remember that flips the sign. So negative 74 is now greater than an x. So to graph it, negative 74. Let's just go ahead and do negative 73, so it's closer to 0, and negative 75, further away from 0. Do not flip those. The number line has to go to where 0 is in that direction, so you cannot flip those. Okay, to graph it, you have a hollow, because there's no equal to sign. The arrow points this way, but since x is on the wrong side, you go that way. Okay, now please practice these and try to do them all by yourself, and then on the next slide we'll have the answers. Okay, the first one, x is being added by 6, so that means you subtract 6 from both sides. That leaves off as x is less than, and that's a negative 9. Now do not flip the sign because this is just subtraction. So to graph it, get that negative 9. 0 would be over here. Negative 18 would be over here. That is an open circle, and the x is on the left side, so we go in that direction. The next one, it is minus 5, so the opposite is plus 5. Add 5 to both sides. That gets you x is greater than. Don't flip it, it's just addition. And this is a negative 8. Don't let those integers stump you. That is a negative, and those are positives. So they cancel each other out, and you keep the sign of the 13 because it's larger. Okay, to graph it, negative 8. 0 is over here, negative 16 over here. This will be another hollow circle. The x is on the left side, so that's correct, and it points in that direction. The next one, it is dividing by negative 2, so it's multiply by a negative 2. Circle that sign on the way by so you remember to flip it. When you do this, this becomes 1, so that's x is now greater than a negative 10. Now the reason why we flipped it is because these are negatives. Because those are both negatives, you have to put both negatives, you have to flip the sign. Now, just graph it. 0, negative 10, 0 would be over here, negative 20 over here. Open circle, and it points to the right. Okay, last one. Here it's multiplication, so you do division. You're dividing. X is still less than. Do not flip the sign because these are positive. And you get a negative 4. I don't care if the answer is negative. What you're multiplying and dividing by needs to be negative, so the sign stays the same. Okay, so you get negative 4. You could put negative 3 and a negative 5. You could put a 0 and a negative 8. These are up to you. Just make the distance appropriate. Okay, so you have your open circle again We didn't practice any closed circles, sorry. Remember the closed circles have those inequality, those equal signs underneath them. None of those have them. The X is on the correct side, and you go to the left. I'm sure you did great.